let's meet our panel. He is the president of the Club for Growth, which has nothing to do with hair, right, Steve? That's totally about taxes, whose new book is Bullish on Bush. Mr. Steve Moore, right over here. She is the Washington-based anchor for BBC World News, Katty Kay. Hey. And his new book is When Will Jesus Bring the Pork Chop? Somebody who has the utmost respect, not just from the audience, but also from his peers. Mr. George Carlin, right over here. Okay. Let's get right to what everybody is talking about, which is debate. Everybody is asking who won. I think that is the wrong question. I think the question should be who's right. But also, I must have been watching a very different debate, because everyone today is saying Kerry killed Bush and Bush was off his game. What game did this guy ever have? He looked like the same Bush I've seen for 4 years.
But finally, someone stood up to the little oil pimp. Finally, someone stood up to him. Right? This guy who somehow has managed to combine Yale intellectualism with the American cowboy myth and be completely inauthentic in both roles. That's what I see in Bush, and I agree with you. He's an empty suit.
I know you're feeling triumphant about that debate last night.
No.
I know the Dixie Chicks are feeling awfully good about this, but, you know, this is a 9-inning game. Bush was off his game yesterday. Yeah, the deer in the headlights look a couple of times, but a couple things. One is about hard work. It is hard work. It's 120 degrees in that Iraqi desert. So it is hard work, and he was right to point that out. But one other thing, don't forget that Ronald Reagan lost the first debate to Walter Mondale. Remember that? And he ended up winning 49 states. So I think Bush is still in very good shape.
You know what? I think I watched a different debate, too. I was actually in Miami. And so I think I saw a different debate from everybody else. All the world's journalists flew down to Miami. We watched the commission's feed of the debate, which had none of the cutaways. Right. So we flew down there to watch something that all the rest of America wasn't watching, which didn't make a lot of sense. But we didn't see Bush looking uncomfortable. And I have to say, Steve, he looked very uncomfortable every time he was being criticized. This is not a man who likes being criticized. It really gets his goat.
And the amazing thing about that was that, you know, you said that how do you lose a debate to George Bush? Al Gore lost a debate to George Bush. And how did Al Gore lose it? By looking surly and grumpy. And what does Bush do? He falls into the same trap.
I didn't think George Bush lost that debate, as bad as he was, which, as I said, is his usual demeanor to me.
You mean you were looking for a plan for the next 4 years?
I was looking for Kerry to want. I disagree with you. He did not call him out. He did not challenge him in the way I would. You know what? He was too gentlemanly. But people do not want a gentleman right now. They want, like, when you want a divorce lawyer. You want a. You know?
He opened the door to being able to raise his voice further. He got past the threshold of everybody treating the president with this great respect and staying, you know, keeping him on a pedestal. He showed him, he came at him with a little bit of spirit and anger and emotion, and he just stuck to his criticisms, and I thought he made Bush look very uncomfortable.
Except nobody knows. I still don't know what his position is on the war. I really don't, Bill. After watching that hour debate, he voted for the...
I agree. I don't either. I'll tell you his position.
And now he's saying wrong war at the wrong time. So what is his position?
Either of those positions. I don't know where either of those candidates are going to take us over the next 4 years.
John Kerry's position on the war is foreigners like me better.
Exactly, and who cares what Jacques Chirac thinks?
That's the truth.
The fact that Jacques Chirac likes
But he could have. Here's my little list of what I wanted to hear. John Kerry never said the word incompetence. Hello, that's what this whole thing is about. You fucked up the war. He never mentioned the Abu Ghraib prison. Excuse.
He had a problem saying that name last time, so I think he dropped it now.
Okay, but I mean, you know, if George Bush is saying, I'm the guy to make you safer, if I was John Kerry, I would have said, you know what, those pictures from the Abu Ghraib-ass prison alone make sure that you were not safer. When George Bush kept saying mixed messages 1,000 times, John Kerry should have said, you know what you're really saying is I'm a flip-flopper. So why don't you just say that? But how about this, Mr. President, and then read a list of the places where George Bush has been a flip-flopper. because he's flip-flopped on the moon.
But
so is Bush. How so? He was against creating the Department of Homeland Security, and then he was for it. He was against creating an intelligence czar, and then he was for it.
He was against going to the UN, and then he went to the UN, and then he went away from the UN again. And Kerry did say some of that last night. He did. Amongst all of those clauses, there was you went to the UN and then you didn't, and then you went to the Allies and then you went away again.
Even after that debate, even though most people say that Kerry won the debate, if you look at the critical question of who do people trust more to keep us safe from terrorism, it's still George Bush by a wide margin. That's what the polls are saying.
Yes, I agree.
The debate was only a few hours ago. That could all change. I think we could still see
And again,
that
that's because Kerry didn't call him out, because he didn't mention these things. He could have painted a picture of Iraq that was the reality there, but he didn't do that. You know, we actually controlled more of Iraq when Saddam was in power. We had the upper part of the country, we had the lower half of the country. He didn't say any of that. And this nonsense about mixed messages, you know, Bush's thing is mixed messages. Well, yes, we have two people running. That's not a mixed message. That's two people have different views. What is the alternative to mixed messages? It's a totalitarian government where we're not allowed to criticize.
For me, it's that inability to criticize. But the moment you criticize, somehow you're seen as being unpatriotic.
Well, how can he criticize a war that he voted for?
No, if you say, why can't he criticize the management of that war? That's not an offense to the American troops, though.
But to say it's the wrong war at the wrong time when he voted for it seems to me to be a total flip-flop.
At least Tony Blair will say, OK, I'm sorry, there weren't weapons of mass destruction, and I apologize for the intelligence. Tony Blair has come out and actually apologized for the intelligence being wrong. Could you imagine George Bush apologizing?
No.
It doesn't happen.
Nobody can. Also, nobody called George Bush on this. He keeps saying we have to stay the course. OK, but it's obvious that we don't have enough troops to do that. We're using Enron accounting tricks now to fill out our troop levels. Nobody says, what if you have to make the choice between staying the course and drafting people? Because that is what the choice is going to have to come down to. You probably can't have both. You can't stay the course without a draft.
Well, we could be out of Iraq in 6 months to a year. I mean, we could be out. I hope we are.
And how would that happen, Steve?
We'll have an elected government put in. As Bush said, we're training soldiers over there to keep the peace. That could easily happen.
Are you on the pipe? I mean...
I want us out of there in 6 months to a year, and I think we can do that.
So you're supporting the Kerry plan, then?
Yeah,
as fast as we can get out.
What color is the sky in your world? I mean,
how long do you want us to do that,
It's not what I want. It's the shithole that he's gotten us into that we can't do anything about. What do you mean we could be out of there in 6 months?
We train more of their militia. We train more of their soldiers and their police so that they can take over the militia.
Okay, sweetheart.
I'm not one of those kinds of guys.
And if I was, I wouldn't ask you. But
look, the training of the troops isn't happening to the speed they hoped it would happen at. They hoped that they would be much further along that track. Even the Pentagon admits that they hope they'd be a lot further along that track. And when they are training the troops, those troops aren't yet capable of keeping the peace. Look, you've had situations in Baghdad where the troops have actually switched sides and gone over to the insurgency. So I'm not sure that you can put a huge amount of confidence in the idea that Iraq's going to be able to protect itself within 6 months. And so long as it couldn't, I think what Kerry said last night, the Pottery Barn, does apply. You went in there, you own it. You've got to make sure this works, not just for Americans, but also for the Iraqis.
Well, one thing's for sure, the American public will not go for a draft.
But if you do have a draft, it would be interesting for a change to, at least for 10 years, have a rich kids draft. To put in rich kids in the draft first. Let them go for 10 years. The way it is now, see, I don't understand how working guys, you know, these guys who think of themselves as real men, and Democrats are demonized for drinking wine and eating quiche and all this, and it just makes them less than men. I don't understand how these guys can admire a man who doesn't understand hard work, wasn't ready. You know, he walks around. Here's a guy who swaggers around with his hands out like this, like he's a gunfighter.
Yeah.
And that's fine if you're ready for a fight. He's not ready for a fight. He's ready for your kids to go and fight.
Well, George,
and that's Vietnam.
When you say you want You want rich people to go fight the war. Are you talking about people like the Dixie Chicks? I mean, they're rich. I don't see them signing up.
I'm talking about the fact that a war is old men protecting their property by sending young men, or rich old men protecting their property by sending middle class and lower class young men off to die. It always has been. It's all about owning things. You know, all of this back and forth and debate implies that there are really choices in this country, that we really have choices, freedom of choice.
Well, it's
an
all
illusion.
volunteer army.
Americans are made, and they're having trouble filling the slots in this all-volunteer army. I wonder why.
Well, raise the pay of the military.
Listen, let me say one thing about choice. There is no real choice. They say freedom of choice. You're given an illusion of choice. Americans are meant to feel free by the exercise of meaningless choices. You don't have, you know what the choices are in this country? Paper or plastic, aisle or window, smoking or non-smoking. Those are your real choices. You don't get to choose anything.
It was your generation that burned their draft cards and said, hell no, we won't go in Vietnam. And now you're saying we should have a draft for
Steve,
Iraq.
what happens if there is another foreign venture, say, after Iraq, or say some of your troops are caught up for longer than your 6 months in Iraq, and say there were you know, there are other trouble spots in the world, and you had to go into those. It seems to me either you have to have more American soldiers, or you've got to have friends around the world.
Right.
Because you're either going to have to do a better job of getting allies to send their forces, or you are going to have to end up with a draft. Because if you can't get allies on board, where are they going to come from? All these people
don't you think a draft would be a bit of a gut check for this country, which, you know, more than half the people still support this war because it doesn't cost them a thing.
Right.
It's a luxury war.
Everybody knows somebody
It's
who's
all
gone
being
off to Iraq.
fought by, you know, kids from one town in West Virginia. And if we had a draft, at least it would spread it out. Don't you think it would make people go, oh, do I really think this war?
But it just isn't true that the only people who are fighting in the military come from poor and middle-class families.
Oh, stop it.
It's just not true. I mean, look at people who are in the Naval Academy and the Air Force Academy.
Ah,
Those
the
are
officers,
not,
the ownership class again.
They're making fear of being in the military.
They're okay. They have a reason to quit people.
Well, they are extending the tours of people who were already there when their gig is up. Okay, 43% of the people over there are the National Guard and the reservists,
Well, they
who
signed
really
up for it.
shouldn't.
But they signed up for it,
Wait
Bill.
a second, they signed up for paintball on the weekend.
What are we paying? Well, I don't want to pay them for paintball on the weekend.
But that's what the gig
The
was.
reason we have a reserve is precisely for this kind of conflict.
Of course it's not. The reason we have those people is to guard the homeland. And you know what? If some shit happens here, we don't have anybody left. We don't. And by the way, they are calling back to duty now, guys who've been out of the military for 6 to 10 years, and about 2/3 are showing up. A third of them, that's called a mutiny.
She mentioned something about, you know, if there's another trouble spot, and this is one of the things, you know, like we're spread out very thinly, you know. Suppose North Korea makes a move, this or that or whatever, but we create these trouble spots. This is our game. We arm people to the teeth, and then we go bomb them and sell them new armament again and build their cities. These are like Halliburton and Union Carbide and all these, the ownership class in this country. This country is owned by 800 or 900 people who run everything, do everything, control everything. They have this guy, Clinton gets in, fine, we can deal with him. Kerry gets in, fine, we can deal with him. It's just in the wind. It's a little reed like this. It's all one big ownership class, and they, you know, it's absurd.
You know, when we went into Iraq, I guess the Bush administration's view was that the Iraqi people long to be free, they just don't know it.
Well, I mean, look, you know they wanted Saddam out of there. I mean, this is a guy who decimated his own people.
Yes.
I mean, raped the women. No rights for women. I mean, how can you say that you would rather have Saddam still in power?
Why not do it everywhere that occurs? Why not do that everywhere that it occurs, not just selectively where the oil is near the Jewish state? Why not this one, that one, 5, 10 of them?
Right. I mean, that's part of that Bush simplistic thinking of just picking out one little fact that's true. But I'm going to point out a few other facts that are true, okay? So we went in there, Operation Get a Load of Us. You're going to love us. And listen to this, as soon as Baghdad fell, sales of pornographic videos went through the roof.
And what's wrong with that?
Nothing in my world. Okay, Now, do you know what sells in Baghdad? It's It's videos of beheadings set to Arabic folk music, praising the insurgents. That's what's selling in Baghdad. Now, if they're getting their jollies watching us get beheaded, is this mission really worth pursuing?
I mean, I think that's a very small minority of people who...
No.
I think the Iraqi people are totally embarrassed by that kind of behavior, and they're disgusted by it.
How the fuck would you know what the Iraqi people are embarrassed what a ridiculous thing. I'm not saying, I'm reading you a statistic. I'm saying they have lists of what is the big seller. It used to be porn, now it's beheadings.
What's this, from the Blockbuster video sales?
Absolutely. All right, I want to go to Tucker Carlson. He is the host of PBS's Tucker Carlson Unfiltered, and the very entertaining, by the way. I think this guy is terrific. Entertaining and knowledgeable host of CNN's Crossfire. Would you welcome Mr. Tucker Carlson, please? Tucker, how you doing today?
Hey, Bill, good.
I watched you earlier today. I saw your partner there, Paul Begalia, show clips of George Bush stammering and stuttering. They put together a clip package. You know what? I thought that was such a low blow. I think
it
you
was.
Did you? I mean,
it was me.
Just,
yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, look. No matter how you feel about Bush, watching him speak is difficult. It's like watching a drunk man cross an icy street. It's uncomfortable.
Well. So, I understand that you are a swing voter, that you have not decided yet, that you might vote for President Bush and you might not. Did that debate last night help you make up your mind?
No, I mean, look, it comes down to how you feel about Iraq. I mean, the polls, Bush's approval rating and people's feelings about Iraq track almost perfectly. The election is about Iraq. If you approve of the war, you're for Bush. If you don't, you're not. Doesn't mean you're for Kerry. But it's sort of hard to support Bush if you think invading Iraq was a bad idea. But just because you think it was a bad idea doesn't mean you have to be for Kerry. I mean, Kerry's a coward on this subject. If Kerry were to follow the reasoning of his own arguments to its logical conclusion, he would say, we ought to get out now. The war was a bad idea. Why are we still there? And maybe, in fact, it was better to have Saddam there. Maybe Saddam, as bad as he was not the worst we could get. Maybe chaos was the worst we could get. That's the truth.
Yes.
And Kerry doesn't have the stones to say it. So just because you're not voting for Bush doesn't mean you need to vote for Kerry.
So, but let me get you clear on this subject. You will not vote for Kerry, but you might vote for Bush, but you might not vote for Bush. Isn't that right?
I'm about as, in that sense, I'm a Kerry voter. Yeah, I'm about as clear as
You're
Kerry.
between Bush and nobody.
Look,
I read your article in Esquire. Now, come on. You were pretty hard on Bush. You do not like what he's doing.
I'm unhappy about the war in Iraq.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think freedom is great. I'm not convinced that all populations want freedom as much as we think they want it. And I'm not convinced that it's worth, Americans dying in order to secure other people's freedom. I think it is worth Americans dying in order to protect America. And I was for the war as long as I thought that Saddam posed an imminent threat. I totally supported it. And when weapons of mass destruction weren't found, that was a big deal to me. And then I went to Iraq, and it was pretty obvious that it's a chaotic place, and we haven't secured it. And it's very hard to subdue a population that doesn't want to be subdued. Pretty, basic.
I mean, I do appreciate you speaking that way, because what I always criticize Republicans for is being loyal to people and not principles.
I see that on the other side. I mean, I honestly think that no matter who the Democratic nominee was this year, Democrats hate Bush so much, they would have supported anyone. They were going to support Howard Dean. I think if Dennis Kucinich was the last man standing, they would defend Dennis Kucinich, veganism and all. Okay, so I don't think it's fair to lay like the team player charge just on Republicans.
All right, then let me give you a test to see if you are loyal to principles other than people. We'll just say hypothetical president. We're not saying anybody. Hypothetical president is told the country is under attack. He should, A, immediately get up and start working on this new issue, country under attack, or B, sit for up to 7 minutes.
It depends what he's reading at the time.
Or whatever he's doing, I'm saying country under attack, hypothetical president, does not need to get up right away. Is that what you're saying?
It's hard for me to... I'll tell you what... Settle down. I'll tell you what I didn't care for was Bush not coming back to Washington. I live here. My family's here. I was here. And I felt like it would have been a good idea for him to come back right away. And that you judge people by their instinctive response. Some people run toward where the action is, where the danger is, and others hesitate. I do blame the Secret Service for that, since I live here and have been yelled at them many times that I know, that they think with their guns, and they tend to be aggressive and overpowering in moments of crisis like that. But look, that's not, I mean, who cares
Tucker,
what Bush
you didn't
did
do
for the
too good
first
on that first question.
Because I didn't piss on Bush for reading My Pet Goat. I mean, who cares?
How about this one? If a person leaks to the press the name of a CIA agent, thereby blowing that CIA agent's cover?
Oh, well, that's such crap. That's such propaganda. Give me a break. I mean, no, okay, come on. Let's be real.
Just a person.
Just a person. Look, the press has a right. Hold on. The press has a right to report the truth. That right is absolute.
Even
it's guaranteed in the First Amendment.
Really? You mean if a Democrat leaked the name of a CIA agent, you wouldn't be all over them like a cheap...
You will never hear me attack a reporter for reporting something that's true, ever. Period.
Really? What if a reporter gave away our troop positions in Iraq, like Geraldo? You would not attack...
His highly detailed sketches written with his finger in the sand? Yeah. It was devastating to national security.
A reporter even has the right to do that?
Look, a reporter has a right to report the truth. Period.
Even
Absolutely.
if it endangers the troops?
I don't think you ought to... Yes, the troops. Even if it endangers the troops. You have a right to report something that's true.
That's news.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought it was kind of basic.
Last one. If a person is guilty of using drugs in violation of U.S. law, that person should go to jail with others who break U.S. drug laws.
No. Oh, come on.
What? No?
Look, if a responsible person uses drugs and doesn't bother anyone, doesn't harass anyone, I think you ought to leave him alone.
Hey.
And I know you think that, too.
Hey, bro, let's party.
He's coming our way.
All right, he's coming our way, George Carlin says. Tucker, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks,
I appreciate it very much. I enjoy your show. All right, Tucker Carlson, everybody. I have to say that everybody called this debate for John Kerry, but thank God there is one news organization that is still fair and balanced, and that, of course, is Fox News. And I taped this. I want to show you this. I taped this off Fox News at my home today, and I find very helpful the Fox facts that they show underneath. So take a look at this as they were covering the debate last night. And see, liberated Afghanistan. Look at that. You see that? Bush gives old people drugs for free. I mean, you know, they give you the skinny right there. Largest cock of any U.S. president. I mean, it's just, you know, doesn't take shit from the U.S.
You're just jealous.
All that stands between us and darkest night. I mean, come on, fair and balanced. Jim Lehrer. The liberal media.
President always...
Great-grandfather. State where homos get married, you see? Wife batshit. Liked it when Dale Earnhardt died. I mean, you know, you don't get this from the other network. Okay. All right.
You're just jealous because Bill O'Reilly has bigger ratings than you do.
The BBC
Bill O'Reilly doesn't
doing
have
its ratings up.
bigger ratings than me. Where'd you read
But
that?
everything you just read was true.
I love this guy. Even when he's crazy, he's laughing. I love that man. All right, I have to admit, this next issue, it is an important issue in the election, but I just love to hear George Carlin on religion. So you were one of the people who gave me the guts to speak out on what has always been the most taboo subject. But this is what bothered me in this election. There are voter outreach campaigns from churches that target likely Bush voters, who I guess are people who are superstitious and never really got Seinfeld. There are voter guides telling the Catholics that it's a sin to vote for someone who's pro-choice. Jerry Falwell put out an email that said, for conservative people of faith, voting for principle this year means voting for the re-election of George Bush. Now, if the church is this involved in an election, why are they getting a tax break? And then we'll get to why are they getting one to begin with.
Thank you for acknowledging the fact that I've been on their case quite a bit, because it's the biggest scam that was ever pulled on mankind. It was this whole religion idea. It's superstition. It's responsible for more guilt and fear and shame and murder and divorce and alcoholism and war and death than any other institution. And, you know, and if it makes some people happy...
There's some bad stuff about it.
If it gives people a little solace, some people get some solace from, well, so does sitting by a nice stream and watching a tree and looking at birds and stuff. But about tax-free status, the tax-free status, and I said tax to churches a long time ago on one of the shows I did, and my point is this: I'm all in favor of helping the mentally ill, but tax-free status is a little step too far, I think. I mean, it is a mental condition that cannot be accounted for.
Right.
To have a belief that there's an invisible man in the sky who's keeping track of what you do and puts you in a fiery place, but he loves you. He loves you.
Well, this is one of the biggest differences between Europe and America. This is a huge cultural gulf between us. Brits, everyone in Europe, none of us go to church really very much. We can't, 20% I think in Britain, it's 80% here, but we can't understand the role that religion plays in your politics. We just don't get it. We don't get why there has to be this presidential candidate who has to go to church, has to profess their faith. It worries us slightly. It makes us slightly uncomfortable.
It worries us slightly.
Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher, who's the most American politician we've had in a long time, gave one speech during her time in office, many years in office, one speech in which she invoked God. She was ridiculed by her own party. You can't do it. You can't invoke God in politics.
The founding fathers invoke the name of God all the time. I mean, in God we trust. So I don't see a problem.
The founding fathers didn't put that on the bill. That was in the 1950s. And God We Trust was put on in the 50s.
A little more
God-fearing people, the founding fathers.
George Washington would be, in God We Hope.
Yeah.
You know, if they're keeping their fingers, let's hope there's a God and he's on our side. Everybody thinks they're on our side. These people in Texas go to a football game. Both sides pray out loud. One side loses every time. 50-50, 50-50. You know, it doesn't do anything. It's bullshit.
Well, also, I love when guys make a good play, they hit a home run, they point up.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you never see
whether that's the dead father or the dead brother or God. It's probably God, but it's all that, and then there's Sandy Sosa was all that stuff like this.
But I never see them do it when they fuck up. You know, they never drop a pass and go, you know. Or they point to Satan, But you know what?
Look, you know, Jesse Jackson is putting politics in the pulpit, too. I mean, let's not say that this is
absolutely.
Absolutely
on
both sides.
Baptist Church on the Sunday before the election.
But, I mean, you're the guy who wants to save his tax money. Here's what bothers me. By not taxing churches, we are assuming that we all agree that churches are good. And there are people like us who don't agree. So isn't that wrong? Isn't it un-American to take money out of our pocket for something that we don't agree on? Isn't that just wrong?
Yeah, I've been saying that for... the government does that all the time. They're always taking money out of my pocket for something I don't believe in. I mean, that's the democratic process.
So you're with us on this?
Yeah, let's have a flat tax. Let's get rid of all the junk in the tax code and have a 15% rate. No tax deductions.
There's a small thing that people forget, that the wall between church and state, the division, the wall was built to protect the state from encroachment by religion, not to protect religion by encroachment from the state. It is a way of keeping religion out. And forget it. You know, it's like a lot of things in this country. Sorry to be so graphic.
No, it's HBO. It's not TV. But, you know, it is one of the many things that has me worried about democracy in this country. I mean, we are supposedly teaching the world about democracy these days, but when you look at what goes on in this country, we're facing an election now where we admit we can't really count the votes. 5 million people are not going to vote because they committed a felony in a country that was supposed to be all about second chances. 99% of congressmen are reelected. I think Michael Moore said the Politburo had less of a record than that. In 2002, only 8 of 435 were not reelected. 3 of them turned out to be dead. One was a collie.
You have to practically commit a felony to be de-elected from Congress these days.
The only states in play now, there's only about 10 states in play. 80% of the country is ignored in this election.
Bill, you should be happy California is one of those states that's being... If
Right.
you lived in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania right now, every time you turn on the TV, it's one Bush ad after one Kerry ad. I mean, they are being bombarded in those states with TV
I don't
ads.
understand how those are working people states. Those are what we commonly call working class folks. Roll up your sleeves, blue collar workers.
Michigan.
Even if they're white collar, it's, you know, it's people who work hard and all that. As Clinton used to say, work hard and pay their taxes and play by the rules.
Right.
But it's a fact. How can working people be so attached to the Republican Party when the Republican Party
want to cut taxes.
The Republican Party spends every waking minute trying to tilt the table against the little guy, rig the system against him, and fuck him any way they can. It's rich versus poor, and it always will be. It always will be.
But, I mean, there's a lot of answers to that, but I think one answer is that in America, everybody who's poor thinks they're going to be rich.
Actually, you know what,
They think they're going to be, they're like, yeah, the Republicans fucked the little guy, and I'm going to be a big guy.
Right.
But you know what the best indication
I'll be
of
on the
what-
side of the fucking.
The best indicator of whether a white male in America votes Republican is not his income, it's how much he goes to church.
That's so true.
That's actually the better indication. If you want to know if somebody's Republican, ask them
But
how
you're
much
right.
they
I mean,
go to church.
75% of Americans want to get rid of the death tax. The death tax is only paid by 2 or 3% of Americans because most Americans believe that someday they are going to be rich. That's what makes this a great country.
Yes, and it used to be called the estate tax.
right.
Well,
and
we
when it was
changed
called
that.
the estate tax, it brought to mind rich fucks.
Went from estate to inheritance, estate to inheritance to death.
Right.
That was the progression.
Because people thought, oh, you know what, I might not have an estate, but death, yeah that could happen to me.
In this country, there ought to be a policy of
insure against
no
death?
taxation without respiration. And that goes back to the Founding Fathers.
One more thing about...
He's on the Jesus juice, this guy. Eh?
Yeah, one more thing about religion. We have a president, apparently, who believes in revelations, who believes that the Middle East will be the place where the ultimate fight, Armageddon, between good and evil will take place, and he is in a position to precipitate that and to foster it and to push it along, and that's a bit unnerving, to say the very least.
And they believe it is imminent.
Yes, that's right.
You know, this is called the rapture.
Yeah.
And they think the rapture is going to happen any day now, which is why I'm selling rapture detectors.